Heavenly Father, we're so thankful to be here today. We're grateful to have a voice and a channel that we can think about Thee. We can worship Thee, we can talk and share story. We're so grateful for all the challenges and struggles that we've had in our life, the times and the gaps where we feel hardship, but also we feel Thy love, and how we found strength to be lifted by Thee and to just simply hold on.
Okay, welcome back to the Hold On Studios. Man, this is a big day. A special day. I just love how miracles just happen and things just happen, and man, this is exciting. We've got Shaan from The Chosen in our studio. Jared, thanks for making this happen. Shaan, thanks for being here. This is so cool. This is like, I don't know, almost like a dream come true. Truly, I mean, we've been Chosen fans for years. Mm-hmm. You guys are on our list to interview. Mm-hmm. Jared and I have a list of people that we want to interview and talk to and get to know and hear their story. And it's just happening, right? It's just happening without us doing anything, right? We know who's in charge and we know who's leading this, and just happy to be a part of it. And so thank you for being here. Just super excited to hear your story and just really excited to have you in our studio. As usual, we like to start our session off with just a word of prayer. Mm-hmm. And if you'd be willing to do that, we'd sure love for you to kick us off.
Absolutely. It's my honor and pleasure to be here. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks,
all right,
Shaan.
So let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing us together to have this conversation. Please bless Kyle and Jared and make this conversation one that touches so many hearts, that reaches so many people in their community and abroad, and just lifts their spirits and makes them feel inspired and hopeful and faithful and optimistic. We're just grateful for fellowship, and we're grateful for this opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better. Thank you for all you do for us, and watch over us, and please protect them and their families. In your name and your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
How'd I do?
Oh, killed it.
All right, my first ever time leading a prayer.
I love it.
Well, way to do it.
I was trying to be like Tom.
Well, guys, I'm super stoked. Shaan Sharma, Minnesota boy,
That's right.
born and raised,
That's right.
moves out to LA. Obviously, he's an actor on the hit TV series The Chosen, playing the part of Schmuel, which we'll have plenty of time to talk about that Chosen and you know what's coming up and feelings and thoughts. But before we jump into any of that, we've got a chance to interview Shaan Sharma. And in acting, I would imagine you take on the persona of who you're to be. But today, Shaan, share your story, man. The story about the hardships that you had, even becoming an actor, or maybe growing up in your life, and just be real and raw with us about how you held on and how you even made it to where you are today.
Sure. Well, it's a big story, so start with some questions.
Let's go. So let's go back to sixth grade. No, I'm just kidding. Tell me about your upbringing. Tell me about your childhood and those formative years that helped shape who you are today, and maybe some of those struggles that you went through, and provide hope for people as they hear your story.
Sure. And if there's anything you want to chime in, don't be afraid to do that. My parents were both born and raised in India. And my father, after college, went to Germany to work for the U.S. Army for 5 years. And it was while he was there that he got an opportunity to come to the United States for just 30 days. There was a program where families in the United States could open up their homes to host somebody who was trying to come here and get a visa to come and move and live and work in the United States. So it just happened that there was a family in a small city in Minnesota called Wells, Minnesota, that opened up their home to my dad, who came over here, and he ended up getting a job with a defense contractor called Honeywell. And so he was able to move from Germany to the United States in like 1975. And then when he got here and he started getting to work, he got a call from his mom saying, "I found the woman that you're going to marry," because in India, half the marriages are still arranged. So he didn't really have any choice in the matter. he didn't really want to get married, but that was kind of the way the cards were dealt. So he went back and married my mom, and they came over here, and I came along in 1980. Okay. And then my sister came along 3 years later. So it's just it was just the four of us. And then the Indian culture didn't really work in our family. The arranged marriage was not a healthy thing for my family. So it was a really difficult childhood. And, part of when I started speaking out started with a conversation we had at the Seville Steak in Gilbert, Arizona a couple years ago. Was the first time I kind of spoke out more publicly about my own challenges growing up and my faith and all of that. And because I certainly didn't make it through that childhood of my own strength, it was certainly because I was preserved and helped along the way. And so my family was a Hindu family, so I was raised in that tradition. And then when I was in high school, I started attending Bible studies with friends of mine and ended up being born again as a senior in high school. And the rest is kind of history. From that point, from my young years of feeling like I was being carried, that's when faith has really been a pillar of my life. And I've just tried to serve God in everything that I do, and I fall short like we all do, but I do my best. And when I was 24 years old, I was working for a guy that helped me find the words that now are kind of like my mission in life, my purpose, which is to make the biggest possible positive impact on as many people as possible, protecting them from the evil in themselves and others. So that's what I wrote down at the age of 24. And my sphere of influence that I've been able to touch has grown from my junior high and my high school to the city of Minneapolis and the kind of the music community there, then the acting and modeling community there, and then coming to Los Angeles, becoming part of SAG-AFTRA leadership and touching the lives of 180,000 performers of film and television, and serving on the board of directors, rebuilding our education and our orientations, and then serving on the negotiating committee 2 years ago when we went on strike against the biggest media companies on the planet for the first time in 43 years. So, and now being on The Chosen, so I've been, the sphere of influence and the kinds of people that I can touch continues to grow. And I know it's not me. I know it's what I'm here to do, and I'm just trying to serve the moment.
So, take me back to high school, right? Because that's not an easy time to kind of make that transition. What do you think was kind of that pivotal moment, or what really led you down that direction in high school?
Well, so I was one of the rare cases where somebody can start being kind of like a loner, not very popular, just kind of sticking to himself. My parents really didn't know how to raise a kid to be cool, dress well, work out, any of that stuff. They were more all about studies and homework and things like that, but they were too busy fighting each other that they couldn't even really manage me or my sister. So I really ended up like taking care of myself instead, where I would spend time drawing with my friends, doing anything I could to feel good, to feel okay, to get through it. I never got into drugs or alcohol or any kind of like those types of destructive behaviors. For me, it was always escape into, music and art. And so I played instruments, and I started singing in junior high school. And so I just started to, when I was in a sophomore in high school is when I was playing piano, which I had taught myself to play in junior high. And I just got invited by some guys who were some of the more kind of popular guys in our grade who had a rock band to be their keyboardist. And then I became their bassist, and then guitarist, and then a singer. And so they became kind of my best friends, and my whole social network changed from my sophomore year on. And so by the time I was a senior, I was one of the most popular, well-respected people in our grade, not just with other students, but with our teachers and kind of faculty. So I had really a magical experience in high school of kind of a social transformation. Started working out, started dressing better, taking care of myself, wearing contact lenses, all this stuff. And so by the time I got to like junior, senior year, I was invited by all these girls to go to Bible studies with them. And so I started going. Yeah. And there was a moment where I just felt, touched, and that was the moment for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. So Shaan, I feel like Shaan's been holding out on us. He's this amazing actor, but he's really a rock star. He can perform on all disciplines in music. So Shaan, tell me about. I want to hear this. So you were born again, right? Mm-hmm. Like that. I love that phrase because it just encapsulates this amazing experience. Mm-hmm. What had to happen to your heart? And because what I feel when I talk to you is this incredible humility. Mm. And your story's not it's special to you, but it's not uncommon in terms of divorced families, struggling, feeling alone, not knowing where your place is, struggling to like grasp for something. And then, this intervention happens with some friends. And what was it like when you made the decision? How hard was it to accept Jesus into your life?
It wasn't hard at all. What Hinduism and being in a Hindu family, and I'm sure this is the case for people who are born in any family with, some kind of spiritual tradition or a lack of spiritual tradition, which is, you need to choose it for yourself at a certain point. In fact, that's one of the things that the character that I play in the show is dealing with, is the fact that he was raised to believe certain things, and he's very devout. So it's not easy for him to move off of that position, especially for somebody who didn't appear the way they were expecting to deliver them from the Roman oppression. So Schmuel is kind of a cautionary tale about somebody who means well, who's following the rules, who loves God, is trying to protect his people. He's just trapped in what he was raised to believe and can't see the truth in front of his eyes. And we're hoping, and many of the people say they hope that Schmuel comes around by the time this, show is over. But for me, I didn't choose to be in a Hindu family. That's just where I was born. And so when we would go to Hindu temple, when we would pray and sing the hymns and all that stuff in the Hindu religion, it's just something I did out of habit, not something I did out of choice. It's something I did because I was expected to participate. But as soon as I started exploring spirituality for myself, when I started spending time with, those of my friends who were, of the Christian faith, that's when I started, getting exposed to the Bible and started getting exposed to a message of love and the teachings of Christ, and it just made sense and moved me, and I decided that's what I wanted to do.
How did you funnel your energy towards the good? Like, you could have been pissed, frustrated, angry, mad at your parents. Mm-hmm. How did you not allow that to win?
I don't know. I don't think that for whatever reason, since I was a kid, I really reacted to what I was experiencing in my home with a feeling of this is not right. I learned at a young age that my parents were wrong. A lot of people can grow up thinking their parents know everything and they're kind of their North Star, their values, all of that. It was the opposite for me. Growing up in my home, I'm like, this is not right. This is not how you should parent. And I knew that because I knew how some of my friends were being raised with parents that behaved very differently. And so I'm like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. This doesn't seem to be the way you should behave. And so from a very young age, I had a healthy distrust of authority and questioning anything that felt wrong. And that's carried out through my entire life of challenging the status quo, fighting back against any time I feel like there's something unjust happening, being an advocate for people who are in the minority or who are being mistreated. That's why I'm a labor advocate now, being on the board of the union. But I've always in certain ways fought back against what I thought was exploitation or meanness or that kind of thing. So for whatever reason, my heart just always went to a righteous anger of wanting to solve the problem as opposed to getting involved in destructive behavior or taking it out on myself or other people or something like that. So it's been a guiding force, and I don't take credit for it. I feel like that's why I was here and why I'm preserved, is to whatever my influence is with my life, I just want to create some more like love and safety. So
this is like really in essence a divine calling, right? Your life and who you're becoming.
Well, I think every life is a divine calling. We just have to discover what that calling is, and sometimes it's touching more lives, and sometimes it's just touching one or a few lives. It's not everybody's built to be the same thing. But I think all of us are here for a specific reason, and we try our best to figure out what that is and then to honor the calling to the best of our ability.
Tell me a little bit about, every actor and actress has a journey, and you certainly had a journey as well that led you to The Chosen and navigating through this path of trying to live into who you're to become and your calling. What was that like? And tell us about that.
Well, I didn't seek out acting. It actually seeked me out.
Interesting.
And that's happened a number of times in my life where I was invited into something and then it became a really big part of my life. And I think part of that is because when I'm invited to do something, I take it seriously. And then I get really involved and I take on responsibility and I try to serve that responsibility well. And then people give me more and more responsibility until I'm in a position of leadership. And that to me is the best kind of leader, is somebody who is there because they're competent, because they're responsible, because they take responsibility for the situation. They can do everybody's job because they've been there. They're not above anybody. They're not trying to be there for power's sake or anything. They're just there to try to handle the responsibility well. Because of the childhood situation that I was dealing with, I never wanted to be home, and I never really had, structure to do homework and that kind of thing. So my grades were really bad, but it's because I was always with friends trying to self-medicate with love and friendship and things like that. And so I ended up having to go to summer school to pass the 9th grade and get into high school. And when I was in summer school, I met a teacher who had changed the course of my life, and he was one of my summer school teachers, and we formed a bond over that summer. And then he happened to be the director of the high school musicals. So because of our friendship, he said, I think you should audition for the fall musical. And I'm like, I'm just a singer. I'm just a, piano player or whatever. Like, I'm not an actor. He's like, doesn't matter. Just try out. It's a musical. You can sing. So I tried out, and I ended up getting cast, and he gave me a solo, so I had a chance to sing a little bit, even though as a sophomore, like, you don't get a solo. Like, it's the school that I was in was so competitive, so large, so well funded. There was a lot of people in the arts, so it was like a sign of good things to come. And so I ended up doing this fall musical, Fiddler on the Roof, and that was the bug that bit me. And then I did 9 plays in high school, including writing and directing one with all of my friends. And then after high school, I got into acting in the Twin Cities, and I did that while I was there. But my first priority was my music. I was trying to be a successful recording artist and musician and all that. So I was playing live shows all over the place as a musician, booking other bands, playing live shows, and acting was something I did on the side, just doing training videos for companies, commercials. There were really no TV shows or movies being shot in Minneapolis, St. Paul at that time, so there wasn't really that kind of opportunity. And then I just ended up working for a company that ran out of money, and it seemed like the right time to make a change. And my girlfriend at the time was convinced I was never going to leave Minnesota. She's from Scottsdale, Arizona, and she thought, like, I'm going to be stuck in the cold north forever. But I surprised her. We ended up saving up for a year. Then we moved to Los Angeles in 2007. And then the way that I artistically expressed myself just flipped. And then music fell into the background, and acting kind of became my priority. And so I started working in film and television in kind of the fall of 2007. And when you go to Los Angeles, you really don't have a clue how it works and, what your journey is going to be. People say, I'm going to give it 2 years and try to make it. And if I don't make it, I'll do something else. And it's like, if I would have done that, I would have missed my entire career. Sure. It took me 5 or 6 years to figure it all out, wow, get the training that I needed, and then to start really working as a performer. But very few performers even make a living as artists at all. In our union, SAG-AFTRA, we have about 180,000 members. Only about 13% of them make over $27,000 a year, which is the amount you need to earn to qualify for our health insurance plan. And even making $27,000 a year in LA, you're not making a living at that.
Right. Yeah.
So the fact that since around 2011, 2012, I've been able to support myself as an artist was just a blessing in and of itself. But that was doing commercials and doing small parts in shows and movies here and there. It wasn't something like The Chosen that had that kind of notoriety. But then in 2018 is when I got the opportunity to audition for The Chosen, and my skills were on point, my infrastructure was on point, my support network was on point, and it served me being able to do my best work and land that opportunity. And then even The Chosen didn't pay enough for the first couple of seasons to really support me as a person, so the other work that I was doing did that. And then after about season 3 and beyond, The Chosen had better funding, and we were able to make it more of a sustainable job just in and of itself. Which was crazy because it was during the during the pandemic too. So while so many people were out of work and all that, I had stability through some of the hardest periods of our career, including the strikes when everything was shut down in 2023 as well. So through some of the hardest years as an industry, I've been just blessed with all of that. But if it wasn't for that teacher back in the summer school after 9th grade, who knows where I'd be?
Yeah.
When you talk about divine calling and he was there for a reason, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Just like you're here for a reason. Everyone's got their own purpose, and it's great to hear your story about how you have, it seems like from a very early age, kind of that ability to recognize good, bad, and to use that skill and to keep honing in that skill what an amazing talent. How do you continue to use that? like obviously with the union and stuff like that, but tie that into kind of your faith and how you've been able to kind of bring all that together.
Well, I feel like I'm just being guided. And just like you said, like, how were you to know that, that you were going to be able to have an opportunity to interview somebody who's part of the show that you've been enjoying? Like, life is just weird and God just works in mysterious ways. And so I can't say that the relationships that I've had, that the jobs that I've had, that a lot of times it's just come to me through the most random means. And so for me, from being part of The Chosen, what's happening now, which is part of the reason why I'm here talking to the both of you, is that people have been so touched by what we're doing and it's having such an impact that, we have events that The Chosen does that are official events. We have official appearances, we have premieres, we have our own convention called Chosen Con. Mm-hmm. So we do things to kind of connect with the people that support our show. But communities on their own are now creating grassroots events that are completely independent. And it started with one guy reaching out to Angel Studios a couple years ago and saying, hey, we're going to be doing an event called Hope in Christ. We would love to have a cast member or two of The Chosen come out. You guys obviously launched the show. Do you happen to know any actors that are part of The Chosen that may want to do it, that are also believers? And so I got a call because I have a great relationship with Angel Studios and the Harmons and their staff and all of that. So they're like, Shaan was just here. You should talk to him. So they talked to me and they said, hey, could you get yourself and another cast member to come out? So me and Nick Shakur, who plays Zebedee on the show, went out to Gilbert, Arizona in September of 2023, something like that. And we just arrived on like a Saturday and met with some church elders at a stake center there in the Seville stake out there, and ended up doing an evening event with everybody. That there was a children's choir, there was prayer, there were me and Nick, and then Jordan Harmon came out from Angel to talk about their story. And then we did a reception line where we got to meet hundreds of people that came out. There were probably 1,000, 1,500 people in person, another 1,000 watching on Zoom. And not only was it an incredible experience just to be invited and taken care of to come and share my experience, but there were a couple of encounters I had with people that came, including an 18-year-old girl that was considering self-harm and felt like she could connect with me because I talked about my own struggles with that in my talk. And so she and I spent 15 minutes where she just poured her heart out to me about being one of 8 children, not sure that she shared the same faith as the rest of her family, so she felt very isolated, recently diagnosed with a condition that really made it hard for her to have friends and go out and be active, so she was really at the end of her rope. And she opened up to me about it, of all people, and I was able to be there for her, and I hope that she's doing great right now. And I gave her my hat at the time and said, put it on your wall, and if you ever think of hurting yourself, you call me, you text me, whatever. I want to make sure you're okay, but ask for help if you need it. Like, don't try to solve it on your own. It's okay if you're struggling with your faith journey. Everybody has their faith journey. And so I'll never forget that meeting with that young woman in that thing. And then as we were leaving and literally locking up the door to the center, there was a family of a woman and her husband and their 3 kids that had driven 4 hours after listening to us on Zoom because she just wanted to meet me and share that she too was one of the few people of color in her high school and junior high, and that she felt seen by what I was saying, and she had some of the same struggles, and she just felt like she needed to come and meet me. And then me, Jordan, and Nick spent a half hour talking to them at midnight, in the parking lot of this stake center. And so even though we met and spoke in front of thousands of people that night, you remember those kind of individual experiences that just make you feel like this is why I was supposed to come here. I was supposed to be here for these people. And after that, it led to, because Tom and his wife, Tom Luna, who's hiding over there, they had driven down from Idaho to come and attend. And then he got the crazy idea to do something like that in Boise. And 6 months later, we had the biggest event we've ever done with 14,000 people and 2 shows at the Ford Center in Nampa, and all these breakfasts and lunches and all these things, all put on by volunteers who were so passionate about the show. And we touched how many more thousands of lives that weekend, and then they did it again in February, and now we had events in Houston, we had another event in Gilbert, we have 4 other cities that are in process, we have another dozen conversations going. I've pulled together 30 of our cast and built a website where people can apply to bring us to their communities, and so we'll be very accessible for people who want to use our presence as cast members to do something good for the community and to spread a message of love and hope and faith, and that's what could you ask for that's better than that?
Yeah.
So, the Lord just keeps opening up new things that I didn't contact Angel and say, hey, I want to do events. It came to me.
Yeah. Just
from me being out there and open about what I am about. And so I can't take credit for it, but I'm just trying to honor the calling.
Yeah. I firmly believe there's no such thing as a coincidence, that you have been led and you've been guided, and your whole life. I love this story because you can see how it's been preparing you. Mm-hmm. Like, you had to be born into that family, mm-hmm. to experience the things you did, mm-hmm. to create some mental toughness and asking questions and challenging things to grow into who you are, to, mm-hmm. to be able to be where you're at today. And I love that. I believe that story is the great connector of people. Mm-hmm. It's this conduit that just, when you speak and when you act, mm-hmm. I can say, I get you, dude. Mm-hmm. I hear you, Shaan, and I'm hearing this in these stories. Mm-hmm. So now you jump in, you're with the chosen, and things are the throttle's starting to open up. Mm-hmm. What miracles have you seen on set? What miracles, as you're in this pool swimming, have come to fruition?
Well, we have actually a phrase for it because it happens so frequently. We call them Red Sea moments. They're moments where, the production, the team, whatever, they're at their wits' end. They're literally there on the cliffside being like, there's no way out. The Pharaoh is closing in, and we just have to surrender. And in those moments, the seas part and God creates a way. It's happened so many times. And from, literally like the weather inexplicably clearing up, or, a technical issue finally getting solved, and whatever it is. But I would say from a general sense that the miracles that we're seeing is that for the first time in film and entertainment history, we have a project that is resonating with people like our show has been, and that we somehow brought all of these elements together that are making it work. And that's the writing, it's the production, it's the directing, it's the acting, it's the moment with kind of the authentic casting of actually having a Jesus that isn't just a white GQ model. We actually have somebody who looks like what Jesus might have looked like back in those days. And the perfect performer. Jonathan is the only one who didn't need to audition because he had that relationship with Dallas from doing a short film with him as Jesus 4 years prior. And when Dallas was going to do The Chosen, he's like, I already know the guy. And so what are the chances of that you would have that the most important character in that show, you don't even need to cast for it because you already know the perfect person to do that. And so there's just so many things like that. And then the courage that Dallas and his team have had to take creative license and use their imagination and be willing to subject themselves to criticism and pushback and all of that, because people are so justifiably sensitive around anything being added to Scripture. But that's why they open up the whole show with a disclaimer that says, this is not a replacement for the Bible. If we do our job right, you're going to go back to the Bible and Correct. Go to the Word. This is a television show, but we're not going to try to violate Scripture. We're going to really try to hold this responsibility, to the best we possibly can. And they have a messianic rabbi, a Catholic priest, and an evangelical pastor that read all the scripts and advise them on it. Dallas and his wife are believers. Dallas went to school for his faith up at what I think Northwestern Bible College in the state of Minnesota, where I'm from. So the team that's all behind the show hold the Word with such reverence that if anybody was going to undertake this project and take creative license, it's got to be that team. And over all the years and all the success, I have not seen it change Dallas a bit. It hasn't gone to his head. He leads with such humility. He leads knowing that we're here to serve him and that we can't give in to the pressures socially to change what it is that we're doing. When he sits across from the biggest media companies on the planet, like Amazon, that's now our exclusive kind of streaming partner, they said on the live stream, we went in and said, here's all the reasons you shouldn't work with us. We're not going to give you creative control. We're not going to let you do this, that, whatever. And Amazon's like, we don't want to do any of that. We just want to help you reach 1 billion people. And so just all of the things that have come up, they're all a miracle. Like this whole thing that's happening, the fact that our show is now the most translated show in the world, and by the time we're done, 95% of the planet will be able to hear the show in their native language, which has never been done before. And so that's because a lot of people can't read, so you can't even do subtitles. You have to actually have it in a dubbed, format. So yeah, in terms of like the miracles we've seen, the whole thing is just so unlikely that it's not us.
And the same thing I was thinking, like, I don't believe in coincidence, right? Like, there is no coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. And I was specifically thinking about The Chosen and when The Chosen was launched and what the world was going through. And, the Lord knows, right? He knows he knows what he's doing, right? He's got a plan. And there was just absolutely no coincidence that the world was looking for something, right? They were looking to find that light somehow. And The Chosen, boom, right? It appears. And the amount of people that just gravitated towards it was just as astounding. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't The Chosen like number 1, or it's like top 10 in Amazon right now, right?
Yeah, it definitely has hit number 1. It's still in the top 10. It's even the story of how it came to be is unlikely,
right?
Because the fact that it's a completely independent crowd-funded show.
Yeah.
That's why we could continue producing the show during the strikes, is because it's not owned by any of the major studios.
Right.
It's why we have the creative, independence we do, is because we don't need to appeal to any other corporate entity for what it is we want to do. The people themselves have funded it from the very beginning. There was no crowd-funded project in media that had raised more than $5 or $6 million up until that time, and it was existing kind of entertainment properties like Mystery Science Theater 3000, Veronica Mars, and so the idea that we were going to come along, partner with this new company no one's heard of, VidAngel, that didn't have any money and was fighting the big studios and on the verge of bankruptcy, that was like, hey, why don't we do a crowdfunding campaign? Because it just became law that you can equity fundraise, from people who aren't accredited investors. And so suddenly Dallas is like, I had a deal with Blumhouse, which is one of the big production houses in Hollywood. My movie just failed. I'm now the media director for my church in Illinois, and somehow we're going to raise enough money to shoot a high-quality television series. I think the quote is like, we'll be lucky if we raise $800, let alone anything else.
Yeah.
And before they knew it, they had $4 million to shoot 4 episodes, which we did in the fall of 2018. And off the strength of those 4 episodes, we raised another 6 to finish the first season, which we shot in the summer of 2019. And then another miracle that happened was the idea that VidAngel had from the beginning was, we'll charge a $30 monthly subscription to watch the show on our platform. And they weren't having a lot of success with that, because people are like, who are you? Why would I give you $30 a month? Why are you charging for access to a show about the Lord? And so they took a leap of faith in that winter and said, fine, we'll create this thing called Pay It Forward, where the show's completely free, and if you like it, you can pay for other people to see it.
And that just
and
like wildfire.
And the contributions skyrocketed. The average contribution was 60 some odd dollars, which means people were paying way more voluntarily than they would have paid if they just paid the $30 to watch it. And so that was another thing where we never had to look back at that point. And then after season 2, we had Come and See Foundation come in, which basically guaranteed that we'd be able to produce our show without any waiting for all the crowdfunding money to come in. They would do the stopgap funding to make sure we could keep going. And now our budgets are like, $50 million a season, which is like, crazy considering we started with no money. And you can see it in every frame, how gorgeous it looks, our locations, our costumes, our cast, all this stuff. So how did a little web series with no money use crowdfunding to become the number 1 show on the planet? That's not an accident.
No.
All right, so Shaan, you are now cast as Schmuel. I love the character. How have you connected and related to Schmuel? And obviously, you go all into everything. I mean, everybody that's listening to you knows that. So now you're this character. How have you connected? How's your life prepared you? Tell me about what it's like to be Schmuel. And do you agree with this character, or has it been a struggle and a conflict for you? Or
That's a great question. I absolutely love Schmuel. Because he's not afraid to take action even though he might be wrong. And that to me is one of the lessons for his part of the story, is that there are good people who are just wrong. And I have been up against people who have, like, I've been challenging the Schmuels my entire life, people who are defending the status quo. And they've treated me with such hostility because who do you think you are coming in and criticizing me and blah, blah, blah. And, the way I'm doing it is fine. And I'm like, no, there's a better way. This isn't serving people, whatever, whether that was in my high school, whether it was in the acting and modeling or music industry in Minnesota, whether it was in the entertainment industry, whether it's in my own union. I've been the one to speak out and say, we could be doing this better. And so I've been up against Schmuel's, but what Schmuel has helped me realize on a deeper level is that they're not bad people, they're just wrong. And I should not assume that they have bad intentions, even if they're behaving very poorly. And part of what it's revealed to me and what I talk about now when I'm in front of audiences is that it is so hard for someone to build up the courage to even speak up when they see something that's not right. Most people don't do it.
Yes.
That's why there's that phrase that all it takes for evil to succeed is for good people to do nothing. It's way easier just to stay out of it. But Jesus calls on us to be the peacemakers, not the peacekeepers. That means putting yourself into the fray. And he certainly did at the cost of his life. So he sets the ultimate example of subjecting yourself to the worst treatment, but knowing that there will be redemption on the other end if you just stay committed and you see it through. And so for me, I've experienced that my whole life, where even after all the pushback, after all the controversy, things are changed for the better because I was willing to put myself out there. But it's been very stressful. It's been very hard at so many points. Yeah. But, every day that I wasn't going through what I was going through in my childhood, to your point, it's a good day. Like, you can't hurt my feelings. You know what I mean? So, yes, have at it. But
why not just give up, right? Like, why not just lay down?
I don't know. I've always had a fighting spirit. I haven't had a resigned spirit. I think, and maybe it's because I have experienced such beauty from God and friends and all these wonderful experiences and the love of some amazing women. And I don't know, I'm optimistic about the fact that if I go through the fire, I will be okay. Every time I've gone through the fire, I've come out okay. So I'm not afraid of it. It sucks, but I'm not afraid of it. Yeah. And it's not even courage. It's just how it works. You have to fail until you win, It's how we learn to walk. You have to fail a bunch before you learn to walk. I have to put myself through pain to get where I want. We all know it. If it was that easy to get anything you wanted, everybody would have everything they wanted. It's putting yourself through the struggle. So with Schmuel, the idea that this guy is just doing his best to protect the people in his community from someone who he thinks is a false prophet, he's just wrong, but we see the struggle of him trying to break free of what he was raised to believe. But, you're both parents, and you don't want your children to abandon what you're raising them to believe just for the first charming guy who comes along. And so how are your kids going to balance having open eyes to see something true, but also respect the traditions and the beliefs that were instilled in them when they were young? It's not an easy balance to get right. Yeah. And so Schmuel is a young man. He's got plenty of time to find the Lord and to accept. Right now he's stuck in trying to uphold the laws and the faith that he was raised to believe. And what has he done that's so sinful other than just not believe in Jesus? You can't say he's sinned by yelling at God. We've all yelled at God. Why this? Why that? How could you do this? Why'd you let this happen? Whatever. So, Saul's done a lot worse. And so whenever people judge Schmuel for his, resistance or his upset or his fear or whatever, I just say, that's because you see a little bit of yourself in Schmuel, because we're all wrong sometimes. Yeah. And you wouldn't want somebody to think you're a bad person just because you're wrong.
God gives us agency, right? I love this about Schmuel. It's we can make our choice. And I think as a parent, and I've learned, I hope I don't tell my kid what's right and just hope that he naturally believes it. Mm-hmm. I hope that you said earlier that converted, right? Mm-hmm. I hope he takes what he's hearing and learning, and then he seeks to take that before the Lord and become converted. And in Schmuel, the thing I love, especially in your acting, and now that I hear your story, it's making sense to me. Mm-hmm. This complete passionate wrestle that Schmuel has with one, protecting his people, loving his people, protecting the law. But then you also see in your eyes when you're acting this, but I love this man. I think I know this man. Yeah, right? There's this, and it's portrayed so beautifully. And I'm curious if Schmuel ever comes around and if he's got his own agency, but it's so awesome to just see that. And have you felt that as you're acting? Have you?
Well, Jonathan's not an easy person to dislike. He's such a lovely human being, and his portrayal of Jesus is just so divinely inspired. It's so wonderful. Jonathan, there's not another human being that I would trust with that part than Jonathan, because his faith is so strong outside of the set, and his humility, and he knows that he's here and just to be of service. He was at the lowest point of his entire career when he booked the role, and now he can't go anywhere, literally, without being stopped, and even people asking him to work miracles in their lives, which is weird because he's like, I'm just an actor, but for so many people, he's become the symbol of something that is so important to them. It's hard to distinguish between the two sometimes.
Just because I know personally in our family, like, we have scripture and we have all these things but for me personally, like, what the roles you guys are doing has helped me personally grow closer to my Savior, right? Because it's really made it real. It's made it personable. It's connected, and I know it's done for so many people.
Because not everybody learns from reading.
Right.
Some people need visual tools, and it'll inspire them to go back and read when they are inspired by something visual that connects with them on a deeper level. Actually, there's a quote that, since you were talking about, stories, that was up on the screen in the room where we had the Quorum of Elders meeting, or Elders Quorum,
Elders Quorum, yeah.
Right? That Native American proverb, tell me the facts and I'll learn, tell me the truth and I'll believe, but tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever.
Yeah.
Like, we don't tell our kids facts before bedtime. We tell them stories before bedtime, right? And we're the same way. We want to hear something that's in context. We want to hear about behavior, because we have to figure out how we want to behave in the world. And stories put all of that in some kind of context. And visual stories reach people in a different way who can't read, are dyslexic, or just really struggle with, there's people that can't even imagine and visualize in their brains. I have students like this because I'm a college professor and an acting teacher, and you can tell some people imagine an elephant and they'll be able to picture an elephant in their minds. There's other people who literally cannot do that. They cannot see an elephant in their minds. They have to see a visual elephant to see it. And so for people like that, they can't access that kind of impact the same way that other people can. So seeing something visual is transformative for them. It doesn't surprise me that when you watch the show, it's now becoming what I think is like a supplement or a companion for people, where like they'll have their Bible, they'll do their Bible study, and then The Chosen will be a way for them to see it contextualized in a way that isn't factual, because again, we're using creative license, but it excites the imagination about how it might have been.
Yeah, it gives me purpose when I watch that to connect with different actors and actresses within the show, and I believe that the Spirit is transcended through that, and it speaks to each of us differently at that specific moment in our life, with our specific struggles, with our specific trials, and I really believe that The Chosen could also be named The Healing. It heals, and it heals people not by prescriptive medication. It heals people by allowing them to connect to something. I don't know what the something is, but it's so neutral.
Love. Connecting to love. I mean, to me, it's love anyway, because that's really what Jesus said to us. And that's something that is part of almost every interaction now is, he says, it's by the love you have for each other that people will know you're my disciples. When Schmuel challenges him and says, what's the greatest commandment in the law? He says, to love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Everything else rests on those. And it's so easy for us to forget that everything else that divides us, that, doctrinal differences or whatever it is, it all rests on loving each other first. And I think that's what's been incredible about these events we've been doing, that we're, with, for example, that Tom and his team have been putting together, is the idea that they're open to someone of all faith, no faith, just come and hear a message of hope and love and unity. That's really what it's about. You're not going to attract somebody to God by judging them, pushing them away, making them feel unwelcome. That's not going to serve anybody. You can actually sit at the table and serve God with people you dislike. I mean, Simon Peter and Matthew hated each other, or at least Simon hated Matthew for being a tax collector and working with the Romans. He said, I'll never forgive you. But they both sat at the table. unfollow, unsubscribe, block, excommunicate. They hated each other, but they put God first, and it brought them together. That's not going to happen with everybody you hate or dislike, but it's not going to happen at all if you don't sit at the same table. And so I love those kinds of messages that come through our show, that basically and some people will just put the show on in the background of their lives while they're doing stuff at home, just feeling that warm energy coming from those messages and those examples of Christ's love, of people having everyday problems that we still deal with today and figuring out how to persevere. So that to me is what is healing about it, is there's very few shows you can watch that feel like they're helping you be a better person and a better, whether or not you're a person of faith or not. A third of our audience doesn't even identify as people of faith.
I think that's what's amazing about The Chosen and what you guys are doing, is it brings so many different people together, and truly, it's inspiring.
Yeah, to us too. It's no less inspiring to me. In fact, in some ways, I feel like I'm able to see some of the broader impact across the world that we're seeing. And it's more humbling for us than anybody else.
So Shaan, what's next for The Chosen? Can you give us a sneak peek of what's coming? And
well, there's a book you can read if you want to know what's coming. So I can recommend that book to you.
What did the pastor say yesterday? What was his acronym? Do you remember?
Oh, I cannot remember. Before you leave Earth, something. He had an acronym for the Bible, and it was just the coolest thing.
Yeah.
But it was something before you leave Earth, or before leaving Earth.
Yeah.
Was the acronym. So,
I mean, we've already been public about the fact that it's a 7-season show. We're in the middle of shooting season 6 right now. We've always shot in Utah and Texas, and this is the first season that we were in Italy for 3 weeks, because there's just a location in a city called Matera in the southern part of Italy that is 9,000 years old and completely built into the side of a mountain out of stone, cave homes all the way to modern buildings. And there's a mountain on the other side of this like little canyon there where there are all the crosses set up, where they've shot 5 other films out there, like Passion of the Christ. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there was the cross right there where Jim Caviezel was struck by lightning and got hypothermia when he was shooting Passion of the Christ. And so we shot in the same place, because you just can shoot the cross and see this gorgeous ancient city in the background. There's nowhere else you can really do that. And so we shot the crucifixion out there. And I was very fortunate to be one of the few people that was brought out to Italy to be present in part of those scenes. And so that's what's going to be coming next, is the 24-hour period of the last hours of Jesus' life. That's season 6. And then season 7 will be the resurrection and beyond. And we don't really know what is going to be in those scripts, because they are being written right now. And so we'll see those sometime in the spring next year. So anyway, so that's kind of the sneak peek that I can give you. There's like behind the scenes videos that The Chosen puts out on YouTube and on their Amazon and on their website, thechosen.tv, so people can go kind of see some of that stuff. But obviously there's other things we don't want to spoil for people that are coming.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Shaan, would you be willing to share your testimony with everybody? Mm-hmm. What you see, what you feel, what you know, what you believe, mm-hmm. and just impart that knowledge on us.
Well, what I would say is the lesson that I am continually learning, and the last year has been really a tough year of me confronting some of my own continued failures. The stuff that I shared with you earlier cuts both ways. The same qualities, the same qualities I have that make me a very courageous advocate for labor or for people trying to fight against injustice, also can manifest in ways that are not helpful in some of my personal life and other personal relationships. So what I've been praying about a lot recently on a daily basis, there's the moment in the Bible, and we show it in the show, of Jesus walking on water. And Simon gets out and says, he's on the water, and Jesus says, keep your eyes on me. And as long as Simon keeps his eyes on Jesus, he's on top of the water. But the minute he starts to take his eyes off the Lord and starts looking around at the water and starts to fear for his safety and what tries to save himself, that's when he sinks. And so that's been the guiding principle for me throughout most of my life, is trying to keep my eyes on God. And every time I take my eyes off of him is when I have a problem. And that's really manifested this last year, of where every time I've been distracted or I've tried to do things on my own or my way, and I've broken a promise I've made to God, or I've, tried to, I've given into a temptation or something, that's when I sink. So for me, I am in the process of a renewal of my own commitment to keeping my eyes on Him.
Well, Shaan, thank you so much. And I hope for all the viewers and listeners, I hope you understand this is a story of a Minnesota boy that struggled, that was lonely, that had all adversities, struggling with parents, struggling with religion, struggling with faith, but that found the courage to just hold on, to just do a little bit more and not give up. And that created some momentum. That created spiritual momentum. That created inspiring a group of friends, inspiring a school, inspiring a city, inspiring a larger population. And now that young boy that sat in Minnesota that you could look at like as struggling is now inspiring the world and sharing his gifts. And I just want to share my testimony that each of you have a gift. It is not the same as Shaan's, maybe. It maybe is. But I believe that if you ask God, He'll share with you your gift. Your responsibility is to accept that gift into your heart and then do something meaningful and purposeful, starting with your group of friends, starting with your school. And eventually someday you will impact and influence the world simply by holding on and sharing your gifts from the world. We're so stoked, Shaan, for you to be with us today. If you like, please subscribe to our channel, like, share it. Man, get this message out to the world, because what Shaan is doing is revolutionizing the world. Hey guys, thanks for joining the show today. If you know of anybody that has a faith story or someone that's holding on or just is an inspiration to you, make sure that you mention it in the comments below. Other than that, if you loved what you heard today, like, share, subscribe, and invite someone that could listen to this show that could potentially change their life forever. Thanks for joining us.